forgot to put this little thing on there. Alright. So I was just going to do a regular video, like one of my regular 8 to 10 minute videos on this subject, but I found doing live streams to be so much, well, funner to begin with, but then it feels more natural to actually do these things in a live stream as opposed to just making a video. Like I tried making this particular topic or this video on this particular topic, and I just felt like it just wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to. So I decided, hell, let's do it in a live stream and see if it can come out a little bit better. I actually worked the weekend. Let's see how many people. We got 3 people. Let's talk a little bit before we start on the video. I actually worked this weekend at the yard, and it was actually pretty pleasant. Like I haven't worked a Saturday in quite some time, and going in today was a lot of fun. You know, it was a lot more casual than your typical weekday was. And, you know, we were all laughing and joking and having a great time. It was great weather. The customers were really happy. We have, right across the river over in Washington, we have the Rod Run weekend, and like 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, I don't know, 100,000 people show up for this thing. I don't even know how many people show up, but it's huge. And really, I think a lot of people are probably attending that event. So it's pretty, you know, pretty casual, slow day today. Okay, cool. 40 people. That's enough. Let's get going. Left some links down in the description. One of them was to the most recent Federal Reserve speech, the Federal Reserve's role in supporting responsible innovation, dated September 8th, 2023. Very interesting speech. Just really, there's one paragraph in here that I really want to talk about. Now, recently in the news, we have heard a lot about the BRICS nations, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and how they're going to ditch the dollar, abandon the dollar, get out of the dollar, no more dollar, don't want to be part of it, and they're going to start setting up their own trade system using their own local currencies, basically circumventing the Federal Reserve's, you know, system for communicating the transactions with this international trade. Okay, so that's pretty much in a nutshell. Now, it has been my belief that it's going to be very difficult to replace the dollar as the world reserve currency. And a lot of people just kind of shake their head saying, no, it's going to be easy. I don't find that to be an easy thing to do, because there's really nothing else that even comes close to remotely doing what the dollar is doing. Now, we've talked about this many times. We've talked about all the things that the dollar is doing as far as providing, well, especially the United States, providing the world with a safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasury, which means that a country would have to be willing to go into debt as much as the United States has in order to provide the world with that safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasuries. And then on top of that, they also, whatever country is going to be the world reserve currency, also has to do a lot of deficit trade, meaning that they have to import a hell of a lot more than they export in order to get that money out to the world. That's Triffin's dilemma that we've talked about. So this is something that we've gone over many times. Now, replacing the dollar itself, right? Even if you were to come up with a way of maybe not having to go into the trade deficits or whatever, and you're going to come up with these currency swaps or a whole kind of mechanism for it, it's the idea of Gresham's law that kicks in. This is where bad money will chase out good. So if you have 2 currencies in the system, one of them being gold and the other one being paper dollars, and the merchant is willing to accept both of them, right? Well, most likely, if you have gold in one hand and paper in the other, you're going to hold on the gold and get rid of the paper, right? And now that's bad money, or yeah, that's bad money chasing out good. So the good money gets hoarded away, and the bad money is what ends up being in circulation. And now that's Gresham's law. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about, like, you know, gold in one hand and paper in the other. Which one would you rather hold on to? So now when we think about what happens when the currency completely fails, like it is completely worthless, well, then Thayer's law kicks in, and that's when good money chases out bad. But the current system has to be completely worthless in order for a good currency to come in and replace the bad currency. Otherwise, the good currency will be hoarded away and bad currency will chase out the good. So introducing a new currency into the system is going to be very difficult if it's a good currency. So, you know, you come up with a gold-backed currency or something like that. Well, it would work so long as the current system completely fails. But if it's still in existence and you put a gold-backed currency into it, the people who love gold would hoard that gold-backed currency, say, thank you very much, here's the paper currency, go ahead and use that, but I'll hold on to the gold. So you can't introduce a good currency when the current system is already in operation. Unless that fails, the good currency can't come in. And then you can't introduce a bad currency. Who would use it, right? You got to have some sort of trust that's going to be involved when it comes to a bad currency coming into the system, because it won't be a bad currency coming in. The way the dollar was able to attain that world reserve currency status is that people believed at one time that if they held dollars, they were holding something as good as gold. I mean, you know, if you had a set amount of dollars, you can get a fixed amount of gold, right? And this was the belief that was everybody had around the world. Like if they held dollars, they held something that was as good as gold. Gold was the world reserve currency, but dollars were providing the liquidity that the world was looking for in order to do their world trade, their international transactions. And so that's how the dollar was able to obtain that world reserve currency status, is because it wasn't competing with gold. It was being treated as if it was gold, right? Then, once everybody realized that it was a bad currency, gold got hoarded away, and the dollar was the one that was left in circulation. That was Gresham's law totally kicking into place. So now again, how does a new currency come in and replace the dollar? All right, listen to this part coming out of the Federal Reserve. One innovation that crosses both payments provision and bank safety and soundness issues is stablecoins, which can also be described as digital tokens that aim to maintain a stable value relative to a government-issued currency, such as the US dollar. When an asset is pegged to a government-issued currency, it is a form of private money. When that asset is also used as a means of payment and a store of value, it borrows the trust of the central bank. So, the Federal Reserve has a strong interest in ensuring that any stable coin offerings operate within an appropriate federal prudential oversight framework, so they do not threaten financial stability or payment system integrity. So isn't that interesting, right? Which, let's see here, let me see it again. Okay, describes stable coins, which can also be described as digital tokens that aim to maintain a stable value relative to a government-issued currency such as the dollar. That's two currencies they're talking about, stable coins and the US dollar. Now, they're not talking about these things being the same thing, but they're talking about those things being somewhat similar in a symbiotic relationship, that if the stable coin is being backed by the dollars, then the stable coin is as good as dollars. Anything that happens within the central banking system that involves the dollar would be transferred right through into the stable coin. And that's what they're talking about. Very similar to the gold standard and the dollar providing the liquidity, right? Here's the stable coin going to be like representing what the dollar was during the gold standard, and the dollar being the gold in that representation, right? Does that kind of make sense? So now if they issue out all these stable coins and people are like, well, we could either have stable coins or cash, right? So if you have cash in the system, then you have one form of currency, but the moment that you put it into the banking system, it turns into a stable coin or a central bank digital currency of some sort. You see where I'm kind of getting at with this? Now they have two currencies in the system. Let's think back to that video that I had done talking about getting a cashless society, and that a cashless society wasn't about really getting cash out of the system. It was about taking interest rates into negative territory. Now, this was coming from the IMF. I'm sorry I didn't leave the link to this part down in the description. I guess I should have. After I upload the video, I'll try and find the link to this part, right? So this was the IMF. This came out years ago. It was when I first put out videos on YouTube. I came across this IMF blog talking about e-currency. They didn't even call it central bank digital currencies at the time. Nobody even knew about this stuff yet. And you know, it was like all brand new. And what they were saying in that blog talking about e-currency is that in order to take interest rates negative, you have to have cash out of the system, right? Again, If you think about, like, if you have a negative interest rate and you have cash in the system, the moment that your bank account goes negative, you would pull the cash out and you would hoard it in the mattress, right? Mattress money, they call this. But this is very similar to the idea of Gresham's law, because if you have cash, then you have something that does not have a negative interest rate to it. It has no interest rate to it, so it's basically just sitting there benign. But if you put your money in the bank, it's going to have a negative interest rate to it because it's being deposited as a central bank digital currency. You see what's happening here? So they know they got to get cash out of the system. Getting cash out of the system would be very difficult if you have a negative interest rate going on inside of the banking system, people pulling that cash out. But if you charge people a fee to not only deposit or withdraw that cash, then what you can do is apply a negative interest rate to a bank account that is the same as the fee that is associated with the deposit or withdrawals of cash, making cash a complete nuisance. Therefore, it would force people out of cash into the stable coin, which is a form of currency that is separate from the dollar, if we just listen to what the Federal Reserve is saying, which can also be described as a digital token that aims to maintain stable value relative to a government-issued currency such as the US dollar. Boom, they got a new currency in the system, right? This is one that now has no way of getting out. It can be applied as far as being able to get your money out in a cash form. Now it's stuck within the system of digital form, right? Stuck in a third party or whatever, and however they want to treat it, like negative interest rates, denying you access, all the other stuff, all the scary things that people talk about. However, as people talk about a new currency coming in and talking about the BRICS nations and talking about gold, or even the BRICS nations combining their currency to have something that competes with the dollar, it doesn't work like that. We learned how the dollar was able to obtain the world reserve currency status and what it is the Federal Reserve is talking about replacing the dollar with. Stable coins or something similar to that. I'd imagine central bank digital currencies would be part of that as well. All right, cool. 12 minutes, that's awesome. Let's go ahead and start reading some of these comments. I'll probably be out here, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour or so. All right, this crew's up there. I saw a super chat. We'll go check that out here in just a second. All right, good evening, Kevin from Lakeland, Florida. All right, PM Galleria is here. Nice, love your artwork, man. Hello, everyone. Good evening from Manhattan Beach. Hello from Dubai. Nice. All right. Sup, guys? They will bring out the dollar digitally as stimulus that can be calculated and tracked from 5 big banks that they already have it in, that launched in November 23rd of last year. All right. Hey, very cool. Thank you for the comment there, John. Dishes every day. Hey guys, hit the like button. Yes, thank you very much, Dishes. Go check out Dishes Every Day's channel. She's growing her channel up, doing chores around the house, ASMR. Love the vacuuming videos, up to like over 300 subscribers now. Just loving it. Awesome job. All right, thumbs up. Hit the like button. All right, I just got here, but lumber is replacing the dollar. Board feet don't lie. Money by weight. All right, I was pretty sure COVID wasn't coming back until April of next year, but because of the geopolitical events around the world, in the financial situation of China and Europe, it has to be now they need. Gresham's law is good in normal market, but it isn't going to be normal because in the end of the digital currencies are going to come from treasuries and only be able to be spent in the countries. Yeah. UE, check out China Insight. He just made a whole video on the subject. It's really good. All right. I've noticed Mexico and China are not selling silver coins anymore. I don't believe in Gresham's law. If you need lumber, you need lumber. But if you need stones, you need stones. It's not replacement, just what you need at the time. I don't think Gresham's law works like just off of what you need. I think it works off of which one is going to be more popular, which one is you're more confident in, right? It's two currencies in the system. And now if you have two currencies in the system, one of them is going to be more prized than the other one is, right? That's Gresham's law. So if you have two world currencies taking place at the time, very much like you had gold and you had dollars, well, it wouldn't have been it would have been capable of the dollar just achieving that world reserve currency status had the people not had the confidence behind it, believing that it was tradable for gold or, set at a certain amount for gold. That's really what gave the dollar that confidence. Now, in order for that to be replaced, you either have to have a total failure of the dollar, which is possible. I mean, that's a very, very real possibility that it can be a complete failure. Not trying to deny that part. But if it's not a failure, then there's certain characteristics that have to take place in order for that replacement to happen, right? And so it's all a matter of liquidity. How, like, if the only reason why the dollar was able to even achieve that world reserve currency status is because everybody wanted to do transactions and there wasn't enough gold to do it. But there was enough dollars if they were provided with dollars. And so as people were provided with dollars, they were like, hey man, we're in the money, we're doing transactions, look at us go. Everything was cool up until the point that they wanted to actually get their gold back. So that was the problem with the whole dollar and the gold standard, is that the whole demand from the world looking for the ability to do transactions and having no real form of currency that was going to do it, it was the dollar that was providing that liquidity, right? That ability to even do that, making everything flow really well. So it's not a matter of like whether or not we want it or anything else. I mean, we all might want a gold standard. The moment that we want something to go into being used by everybody, there's going to be a group of people who are going to hoard that out and using another form of currency, a bad currency. It's just, I mean, to me, Gresham's law makes complete sense. You saw it just recently in Venezuela. The bolivar was completely worthless, had no value to it whatsoever. They allowed the dollar to be used in the country again, and things flourished. People were like, man, look at all this awesome stuff I can buy with my dollars, because everything was so cheap. They started buying up assets super cheap with dollars. Dollars started flowing through the system. Everybody was in the money, just loving it. Business was taking off, and the most industrious people started hoarding those dollars until they deprived the whole economy of dollars again, and then everything fell back into poverty, and now they're back to where they were. So let's go read some of these super chats. Let me go find that real quick. All right, PM Galleria, thank you very much for the $10, man. Very cool of you. What if there does not have to be a world currency or BRICS? Can Jubilee their U.S. denominated debt amongst themselves? They would only need USD liquidity in that case. They can reset and crush the dollar. Well, a lot of this debt isn't necessarily due to the United States, Like a lot of this, like when I say dollar denominated debt, it's not just means that they sold it to the United States. It may not have anything to do with the United States. So really it's like them being in debt to other nations themselves, right? So it's not like, I mean, I guess they could. There's just like all this dollar denominated debt that's around the world. Everybody could just say like, well, let's forget about it. Let's not pay. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. Like every single retiree would fail. Like you think about like, I mean, even, okay, just take a small example, big example. Okay. The major property developer in China, Evergrande, right? They started to default on their dollar denominated debt. That is what drove them down. Like they were making their payments on their Chinese, like, I don't know if they were making it, but they had more debt in yuan denominated debt. But it was the section of US dollar denominated debt that Evergrande, the Chinese property developer, had that was important, because when that debt started to default, the rest of the debt started shooting up. Like they couldn't roll their old debts into new debts because of the dollar denominated debt portion of it. That is what determined their credit ratings and everything else that went with it. And that started dragging down the entire system. So, and that was over in China. And that wasn't even like it was a huge part because it was a huge property developer and stuff. But it wasn't like all their debt that was defaulting on. It was the dollar denominated portion of their debt that they started to default on that dragged them down and started dragging the whole property, the whole real estate market down with it. So. It's not like it's just going to damage the U.S. I mean, that damages themselves, like if, the dollar denominated debt was to just all of a sudden like not get paid. There's many nations around the world who are going to feel the pain from that, including the United States. But the United States isn't necessarily the one they're owed to. You know. All right. Was there another one down there? There was. Hey, Razor One, thank you very much for the $1.99. Have a conversation with Robert Breedlove. Okay. Everybody was forced to do transactions in dollars. I don't know if they were necessarily forced to, as much as they just found that it was easy enough to do it, considering they believed that it was as good as gold. All right. I'm thinking there may be dual U.S. currencies in play at some point. No, that's exactly what they're talking about. The stable coins is going to be the dual currency at play. You're going to have cash, and you'll have what they refer to as e-currency, but the central bank digital currency. So that will be the two currencies that are in the system. What they will eventually do is make it such a nuisance to have cash in the system that everybody will be in the stable coin or the central bank digital currency or whatever it is that the Federal Reserve is planning on everybody funneling into, and they will slowly get cash out of the system. Like there will be cash, but it will be prized and hoarded in the belief that they don't want to be locked into a stable coin, but it won't benefit them none, right? I mean, the initial idea is that they can do this. They can get out of the system by pulling cash out, but it's not going to work for them, right? And so once all the cash is out of the system, everybody will be locked into the new currency that can then, you know, play their new games of going into negative interest rates and doing whatever it is that they want to do. All the scary stuff that everybody's thinking. Right on. We got 186 people watching. Go hit the like button. Yeah, we hit the like button. We'll get more people up here and through the chats. It makes it a lot more fun. All right. The problem in the Gresham's Law thing here is that you're moving away from central banks in the end. So in the beginning, yes, central banks, digital currencies will flood the market. BRICS just pegged currency to gold, checkmating the dollar. No, they didn't. No, they talked about it. Where is it? Where's that currency? Right? Does it exist? I mean, I've heard people talk about it, but I don't know where that is. Right? I mean, until there is an actual system in play where you are trading gold, right? By saying it doesn't make it right, right? And even if you come up with a system that says, "Whoa, look, we've got $1 million here in gold that we can do like these transactions," that's not enough. That's not enough to do world trade with, right? It's a credible threat. I get that, right? But as far as an actual gold currency being in the system, no, right? And then on top of it all, we already know from the Cantillon effect that if there was a gold-backed currency doing world trade, the most industrious nation would hoard all the gold and everybody else would be deprived of it. And that country itself would then have to issue out a currency backed by nothing, right, in order to provide the liquidity to the world, very much like the United States did. Or they would have to give their gold back up to the world through the wealth distribution by falling back into poverty. I mean, the gold standard isn't exactly a pleasant experience for nations to go through. Now, granted, if you understand what's going on during those business cycles, it's a hell of a way to make a lot of money, and it's also a decent way of having prices be very stable throughout time, right? So that works out really well for people, but a lot of times I don't think people take into consideration that a gold standard could literally choke off commerce from taking place, because there's just not enough currency in the system. Right? All these dollars floating through the system provided all the liquidity that everybody would ever want to do transactions with, but a gold standard would limit that. Let's see here. Then will not be accepted after hyperinflation. Then you move to a treasury-based currency for transactions and purchasing things only made in your country. And then you have the Goldbergs. Let's see, $55 US to 1 brick. Gold-backed digital for labor, calories, liquidity. Okay, we have UBI. We will have UBI, and it will be named the US dollar, just only in the name. It'll come from the US Treasury. Or come from Treasury. Shit's gonna implode here shortly regardless. If countries are willing to get together and make agreements that all it really takes to bypass the dollar. Can you give an example of there being any kind of world trade on that kind of level? Like, just out of curiosity, right? Because what you're going to do is you're going to start being like Russia, selling oil to India in rupees, and then you end up with more rupees than you know what to do with. Now what? Right? Like, it's just not that simple. You know, like if you got a hold of all these rupees and then anybody else that you do business with was willing to take rupees, then that would be cool. But not everybody you're going to be doing business with wants rupees because they may not want anything from India. And so now you got this complication of who it is that you can do deals with what particular currency that you have at the time. All right, that's like very frustrating. The dollar was anybody did it. You could buy and sell, and everybody bought it, and everybody used it, and there was no question of it. Right? But doing business within your own currencies and then expecting all these other nations to be willing to accept the currencies of these other nations, even though they may not be wanting to do business with those nations after they get their currency. Now what do? Right? This is one of the problems that they are having. I mean, that they would have, is that there is no central, like if you had a basket of currencies that you could go to, like, you know, it was just like, man, I got all these rupees. Now if I could just like dump those into like an SDR, the special drawing right? You can go and buy some of those, and now you got a common currency like the SDR that you can use around with all these nations who can then trade it in for whatever currency they want. Then I could understand, like, you got a world reserve currency, something that you could go to. But just doing deals within your own local currency, there's going to be a concentration of currency going to one particular nation or another, right? Very much like, you know, the exporting nation of Russia having to deal with all those rupees. You know? And so, like, it's easy to say it, right? They'll just do deals in their own currency, but it's not easy to understand what the consequences of doing that would be, right? And that's what it would be, is that you end up with a concentration of money for a nation that you don't really want to do, you know, you may not be doing trade deals with. Like, you know, you may not want their stuff, you know. They may want your stuff, but you may not want theirs. Peter Schiff has talked about something like this. Yeah. Do you expect the Fed to hike in November? I don't know. I'm almost anticipating, after reading the article on the neutral interest rate that was rising again, I would almost assume that they would have to raise the interest rates again. They would have to raise the Fed funds rate in order to continue in the restriction of the economy. Now, whether or not that neutral interest rate has risen or fallen, I mean, I guess that would be the real question on it. But I don't know. Like, to me, they're probably going to give out some pretty good signaling or forward guidance before the actual, you know, announcement on whether or not they're going to raise rates. And if they are going to raise it, they would probably be pretty clear within their you know, statements and their signaling, their forward guidance, their credible threats, so that the market can be prepared for that interest rate move. But at this point, I don't really know. I don't think that they're going to raise rates. I don't know. I guess they could. I mean, but I don't think they are. It's just like, it doesn't seem like that's the case. If you see my first comment about the stable coins are going to be the digital coin that is launched for stimulus, as, yeah, we read that part. All right, an interesting observation here in the UAE. Last visit was 6 years ago, and all the currency was local medium, like, or AKA the dirham. Now all the merchants accept US and dirham. Really? So now they accept you. 6 years ago it was just the dirham, and now it's US dollars as well. Interesting. That's the dual currency I was mentioning above. You can't burn gold, hence paper. Johnny Guzzi, your comment is the first that actually made some sense. That's because you backed it with labor. Gold and silver have been money for thousands of years and will remain money. John Guzzi, you socialist. Oh, you guys are laughing. Okay. Your cashless society thing will most likely be correct. If it's from the central banks, then you have your one world currency. If it's from the treasuries, then country get their wealth back. For stable coins or any digital coin to work, it will have to be redeemable for gold or silver. No. Why? The dollar isn't really redeemable for gold or silver, not like it once was. It works. So why would stablecoins have to do that? I mean, at first, people can be redeeming their stablecoins for dollars, and that's the only thing you would really need it to do, right? People don't really care about gold or silver backing the dollar. I mean, most people think that's the case, that, that the dollar is backed by gold. But today, nobody cares that the dollar isn't being backed by gold. Not that they know or don't know. So once you get into a stable coin and you tell them cash is not really, you can't use cash anymore, they won't care, because most people don't really care about cash anyway. They would rather use their debit cards. And if they're using their debit cards, they're probably going to be using a stable coin and not even know that they're using stable coins. Like, most people probably won't even realize that we have shifted into two different currencies. They'll just think, whatever, it's the same thing, All right, hit that like button. Yes, please do. All right. True, a cashless society could lead to a single world currency from central banks or treasuries backed digital currencies might preserve national wealth. Are you from Australia? No, I'm not. All right. Indy checking in. China is buying mass amounts of gold and silver for a reason. Yeah. Watching them build a giant semiconductor plant here, gonna be $600 billion. Private money transactions will no longer be private when this happens. Good night, guys. Have to go. Good talk. All right. O-M-R-O-M. Can you pay credit card debt in digital coin? Well, that's a what if question. We don't have digital coin yet, so it's just like, how are you supposed to say whether or not there's rules and whatever you can do it with? I would assume that the digital coin or the digital currency or central bank digital currency that's being used will be considered like a legal tender for paying debt, just like anything else would. Dubai has ATM machines where you insert cash or a card and they give you physical gold. BlackRock bought Voyager Digital Coin Exchange. It's subtle, but the values of our options can carry weight also. Patience yield dividends. Everybody was forced to do dollars or transactions in dollars. No, we read that one already, and they weren't forced to. Like, you had a choice, right? You said, I don't have to accept those dollars. I'm not going to. But people were like, man, we need those dollars because we want to do transactions, right? And that's really what it came down to. People weren't forced into dollars, right? They chose to use them, and they didn't have to at the time, right? But they did. And so, you can't blame, past generations for accepting the Federal Reserve notes. Like, that was something that they didn't have to do at the time. All right, still can't compromise stablecoin for gold. No one controls gold, limited, rare, and cannot be destroyed ever. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, Deja Vu, but I don't agree with the gold standard, just because I believe that if we were to go into a gold standard, not being the industrious nation like we once were, we would immediately fall into poverty. The personal ownership of gold and silver, I think, is very important for everybody to be, have at least some of it, so that they can be away from that third-party claim, so they don't have the issues of somebody not answering the phone, or the envelope not showing up in the mail, or the app not responding, right? They are out of that third-party claim. They don't have to worry about any of that. So it's very important for the individual, for insurance purposes, to have possession of gold and silver. But to move back to a gold standard or a gold-backed currency or something like that, I think it would be very dangerous for a country that is not industrious, right? Or it would only benefit the most industrious nations, I guess I should say. Hey, Simon, just picked up some more gold, getting ready for the Great Reset. Good for you. I need to pick up some myself. All right, United States only holds 15% of the euro dollars, which is dollar denominated, that made outside of the United States. All right. With all the corruption, so 15% of the euro dollars, which is dollar-denominated debt, dollar-denominated that made outside of the United States. Yeah, so you have to think about like how much outside of the United States of dollars actually exists that doesn't have anything to do with the United States. And if all those dollars were to disappear, all those euro dollars, all those dollar-denominated debts were to disappear, how many dollars would truly then be in existence being used? Like, you have to think, these contracts that are written in dollars get used as if they're dollars, right? So that's a demand for dollars that a lot of people don't see as there, right? All right. With all the corruption and criminal acts involving cash, I just don't see how they go to all digital. Digital has an electric signature, which is very traceable. All the corruption and criminal acts. Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think about that sometimes. It was just like, if you bring in the idea of like smart contracts where, you know, after, you know, there's certain events that are going to take place in which that this contract automatically goes through. Like, there is no stopping it, right? And so if you have like these digital contracts and the contract is definitely going to go through, you don't have to worry about like taking somebody to court saying, hey, they didn't fulfill their contract, they owe me money or something like that. The smart contract automatically goes through. So really, if everything was set up more in that smart contract form, which I know can be dangerous in itself, but really, could it be possible to just make governments and legal systems and all this other stuff just completely irrelevant? I mean, that would be kind of cool, right? So now when you're talking about crimes and stuff like that, well, if you don't really need the court systems because you have nobody really, you know, cheating you, because there is no way of really cheating you if you have a smart contract that's either going to pay or not. I mean, that could actually make a pretty decent society, I think, out of it. I think it's kind of dangerous on top of it, but really, you know, the good and bad points, you think of the good points, they're pretty decent, you know. Not saying that's the way it should go down. I'm just saying it's a possibility. All right. What is the Fed doing with interest payments? With their interest payments that they get? You know, the Federal Reserve, they're like nonprofit. Anything that they make as far as beyond their operating costs gets returned back to their treasury. I don't know if people knew that. A lot of people, I think that they don't realize that the Federal Reserve is actually, I mean, well, right, I mean, I guess with their assets being under, most of the time they get a profit, and that little bit of profit they turn back over to the treasury. So, but as far as I know right now, with their assets being as low as, like, because they're kind of going through the same thing like the banks were going through. When the value of the treasuries, when the price of those falls, like their balance sheet gets put up at, I won't talk about that now. I'll get some better information and talk about that. All right. What about the dollar-denominated debt trillions defaulting on commercial real estate in the U.S. today? Right? I don't know. I mean, we got to see how much that plays out. And I mean, it seems to be pretty significant. I mean, you know, there's a lot of apartment complexes, a lot of commercial real estate. There's a lot of stuff out there that got started during the whole COVID thing and could not be completed because they ran out of money due to the fact that the material costs had gone up as much as it has. So, I mean, there's a lot that could happen from that, but it's hard to say like this is going to create this situation in which the whole real estate market is going to go crashing down. Who knows what's going to come up from it? Who knows, like, you know, what kind of tactics that the Federal Reserve and the banking system can come up to deal with, like, you know, massive defaulting commercial real estate, you know, properties. But, you know, to try and be like speculative of it right now is very difficult. Like, because I tried to speculate inside of the housing market many times and realized that things never quite end up being the way that that we all thought that they were going to go down. Like, take for example, when the moratoriums come to an end and everybody's going to have to go back to making their payments, we're going to have this huge foreclosure event taking place. But what not a lot of people were thinking about is that as the prices of these houses moved up, if you couldn't go back into making payments on your house, you just sold your house off and you were able to pay off all those back payments that you didn't make and probably came out with a profit from it. But that's not something that a lot of people were thinking was going to take place, including myself, right? So, many things, when the interest rates go up, that we're going to see a housing market crash due to the fact that people weren't going to be able to afford the new mortgage rates, and all the, the houses were going to have to come down to meet the capabilities of the buyers. This is still something that people are talking about today, but yet hasn't occurred, right? So being speculative of like the real estate market and what's going to happen out there, I think is kind of a dangerous thing to do, especially since we don't know exactly what it is that the Federal Reserve and the banking system has set up in order to deal with a unusual and exigent circumstance, right? Like the pandemic or something like that. But, people ask me all the time, what are you going to do in case the bank's running into a liquidity issue? And I thought to myself, there's nothing you really can do, because the Federal Reserve is probably going to just go ahead and issue out some lifeboats to save the banking system from going into like a situation in which that they wouldn't be able to provide the cash to people. Well, we saw that happen with the Silicon Valley Bank, right? Where all of a sudden they were going into this very issue, and the Federal Reserve stepped up with the Bank Term Funding Program. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody knew about it, right? Now, I said that they were going to come with a lifeboat, but I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know it was going to be that Bank Term Funding Program. So again, when it comes to the real estate, there's so much talk about it. There's so many people who are aware of it that I have a very hard time believing that the Federal Reserve and the banking system have not come up with a way to handle a crisis situation that comes to that in a form of, I don't know, some kind of bailouts or something, Not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, it's going to be, I don't want to be speculative in that market because I have no idea what the Fed is going to do, but they obviously know something's up, right? All right. If gold and silver was revalued against the debt, you would have to carry a very small amount of gold and silver to shop with and pay bills. Well, the only problem with that is that we don't really have anything that we produce in this nation. So if we wanted anything that we were going to shop, even if it was just a small little coin and go down to the shop with, we have to export the gold that we have in order to get the stuff here to buy, right? So like we wouldn't have anything, we might have gold coins in our hand, but we wouldn't have anything to buy. If we want something to buy, all our gold would leave the country. And then we wouldn't have any money to buy anything with, because we already we sent our money out to get the stuff in, right? So now we would be out of money, and then we won't produce anything. So once the stuff is gone, then we would be in poverty, right? So gold is a very dangerous thing for the United States to go back onto as far as a gold standard goes, unless we become industrious again. If we were an industrious nation, then I'd be all for it, all right? All right, it would be interesting to have BTC backing up stable coins, not only USD. I wouldn't do Bitcoin again. It would be the same issue that the gold standard would face, is that there's a limited amount of Bitcoin. So that means if you're going to do transactions with somebody else and you're going to import their stuff, they're going to have Bitcoin for the stuff, right? So you export all your Bitcoin, import all the stuff, and next thing you know, we don't have any Bitcoin left. We have to be an industrious nation that either produces the Bitcoin, right? I guess we could do that, be a Bitcoin miner or something like that. Or we have to figure out a way to become industrious again, which means that we can't buy stuff from the world. We have to start making it for ourselves here. And therefore, we would have to work harder for less for a long period of time before we would get to a point in which that we would be able to produce enough stuff to export out to the world, and the world would send us the Bitcoin. No matter what we look at, if there's a fixed currency, the United States would be in a very dangerous position because we don't produce enough, right? We don't produce enough considering our standard of living. We have a very high standard of living. We import most of what it is that we enjoy as far as luxury goes. And the only reason why we're able to do this is because we're the major issuer of U.S. Treasury, the debt. that the whole world wants because it's the safe and liquid asset. It's not good. I mean, I'm not trying to say this is good by any means. It's just the situation that we happen to be in. And as far as making it better, I don't find gold standard would make our lives any better. It would make it very, very bad. It would make it worse, right? So if we went back to a gold standard, I would move to the most industrious nation because that's the one that's going to do the best, because they're going to export their stuff and import the gold, and then their standard of living is going to go up. Everybody else is going to have a lower standard of living. If you fall into poverty with fiat currency, what's the difference into falling into poverty using the gold standard? But okay, are we falling into poverty right now as the United States? Like, no, the United States is like mass diving into luxuries, like straight up massive luxuries here in the United States. I see homeless people walking around with cell phones and food cards. I mean, there's people in this world who really have it bad, right? And they don't get cell phones, and they don't have a food card that they can go down to the store and buy food with, right? But that's what our homeless live in a life of luxuries comparatively to some people in this world. So the United States is surprisingly, believe it or not, the United States is a massive luxury hub, right, of the world. Everybody who is living here is diving into luxuries in a way that you don't even understand. And it sucks because a lot of people are struggling every single day trying to figure this out. Trying to say, like, man, how come it is that, some people out there seem to have it all, but yet I have to work every single day and it's so hard to make it here in this world? Is because of the Cantillon effect, that separation between the rich and the poor that takes place. But, again, like, when the homeless can walk around with cell phones and food cards, I have a tendency to believe that there is a hell of a lot worse places in the world than the United States, Digital currency backed by gold would resolve all those problems. It doesn't. It creates a whole bunch of new problems. Right? I mean, it's easy to say it. It's easy to say, hey, digital backed currency, gold backed currency would solve all these problems, but it creates a whole bunch of other ones, right? It creates a whole bunch of issues, especially for the United States not being the industrious nation that they once were, or we once were, exporting a massive amount of stuff. If you don't do that, then the gold standard is very dangerous because you export all your gold. And now what do? You fall into poverty, And gold, silver, copper, brass standard like it always been. In the economy and global politics, the lines of reality are completely blurred. Uncertainty is the only known factor. Now, that's one of the reasons why I just don't follow politics, is because I just don't believe that they are I just don't think that they're that important, and I don't think that they have that much influence over us unless you give it that meaning. How many people that it's amazing how many people want to come to me and talk to me about politics, about something, and then they get so angry about something that they have heard. And I'm thinking, I don't even know why this is important to you. Like, you've created this situation in your head in which that this thing that you are now talking about, this political issue, has become so important to you that now you have, like, anger and emotion and all kinds of stuff that is now attached to it, right? Well, that's them grabbing a hold of your attention, so you'll pay attention to that and not anything else, right? Because if they can keep you in fear, then they can keep you from, moving and advancing and becoming like, more enlightened person, right? They keep you in fear. Fear is a low vibration, right? Fear, anger, frustration, jealousy, all this other stuff is a very low vibration. That's what the news fills people with. If you can stay on a low vibration, it makes it very difficult to interact and become connected with other people. And so if they can keep people that way, then it'll keep them from getting organized. It'll be easier to, maintain the narrative, especially if you add fear into it. Because really, if you want to, it's easy to control the mind, right? It's easy to control the mind. It's easy to control the narrative. What you have to do is you have to hit somebody with a shock, with something that really gets them really hard and deep, right? Something like something that affects their money, something that affects their health, something that affects maybe their family or something like that. If you can get some kind of news or information that hits them really hard with that, that's the emotion that gets them. Pow, right? Then you start hitting them with facts. Boom, boom, boom. One fact right after the other. This many people have died from. This many people are going to suffer from. This many people or whatever. And you hit them with these facts over and over and over again. Well, then what ends up happening is that you will turn that feeling, that understanding, or that information that you got, you will turn it into not only beliefs from the facts, but then you will be convinced by it, right? And so once you are convinced, it makes it very difficult to see it any other way. This is how come so many people were like, I don't know. I mean, like, just the COVID thing. Like, I don't know how many people were coming to, starting to spit out stats and statistics and all kinds of stuff about the information about COVID. And I'm thinking, people getting this information off of the news. Like, I mean, some people might have gone and done some real research and actually studied, the documents or whatever it is that they needed to come up with this information, but most of the time they ended up getting it from some kind of talking point off of the news channel or something like that, which again, it may not be fake, right? It might be accurate numbers or whatever, but it's hitting you with facts that are guiding you down a particular belief, right? Until you are absolutely convinced by it. Happens all the time. Like, what was another example of it? I don't know. I could probably come up with other ones, but anyway, that's the way I kind of see it. Oil standard. We all need energy. Bartering times. You just made my own argument. Everyone can do business in gold and silver. Okay. And so, are you just denying the fact that the Cantillon effect would take place and that the redistribution of wealth would go out to the most industrious nations out there? I mean, I guess it would be cool for you if you left the United States, right? But I mean, what do you want for everybody else here, to suffer in poverty? I mean, because that's essentially what would end up happening. I mean, for wanting a gold standard. XRP. Everybody talks about XRP. Backed by gold. Oil backed or food backed for trade. Who needs that much gold? De-dollarization in Chinese is Chinese propaganda. I totally agree. I think it's total. I think it's even. I think de-dollarization is Federal Reserve propaganda. I think that's straight up coming out of the Federal Reserve. Like, you take on the idea that they use credible threats, right? Credible threats is their main policy tool that they use, because really their monetary policy from the adjustment of interest rates is really kind of more of a failure once they hit the lower bound of zero. I mean, they're starting to get a little bit of their ammo back, so they're getting some of that. But for the most part, the last 10, 15 years have been really like ineffective monetary policy that has used credible threats for, guiding the economy down the road that they were hoping that it would be the best for achieving their goals, or whatever that is, because they never seem to achieve their goals. But I think the whole de-dollarization is Federal Reserve propaganda, and I felt this way for quite some time, just because of all the amount of news that comes out that doesn't make any sense about how like this gold-backed BRICS currency is coming out. Like, that's like doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even exist, and how it is that there's a threat by it doesn't make any sense to me if there's no real currency in existence yet, right? So that one right there, I was just like, why are people talking about something that doesn't exist yet, right? Why is that? That's a credible threat, right, that's taken place. I mean, it's credible, right? It's possible. You're saying they don't even have all this, like, I'm not saying they don't have all the ingredients to make that happen. I'm just saying that it doesn't exist yet, right? And then on top of that, like, the amount of trade that is being done by the BRICS nations is insignificant amount comparatively to what the dollar is doing. Like they're saying, no, they're ditching the dollar now. And it was just like, they're barely coming close. Like they've done a lot, but even if they were to double their efforts from right now, it still would be just a little bit comparatively to what the dollar is doing. So it doesn't make sense that it has so much media attention going on to it. Like, unless they are trying to guide a narrative, unless they are trying to push a particular belief out there, and it hits you over and over and over again until you are convinced by it, right? That's exactly what propaganda is. That's how it works. Hit you with the emotion, facts, until you're convinced. So why would the Federal Reserve even be doing that? Like, what would be benefiting the Federal Reserve by pushing out a narrative that says de-dollarization, right? Well, we take it back to prior to quantitative easing, just the recent bouts of quantitative easing, where they asked Jerome Powell, hey, how much money do you plan on printing for, this recent round of quantitative easing? And he says, well, that depends on how much demand there is for our liabilities. How much demand there is for our liabilities. They start printing up a bunch of money to meet the demand. What if you can't meet that demand? What if you can't print enough money to meet the demand? Lower the demand. De-dollarization. Right? The Federal Reserve can't print enough to do it without creating some real shit, right? Then how do you meet the demand? You got to lower the demand. De-dollarization. Get out of the dollar. Use your own currency. Stop using ours, right? Our government can't sustain all this debt. We can't keep issuing out U.S. treasuries and printing out all this money and doing all this stuff. Get out there and start using some other form of currency. Stop using the U.S. dollar, right? I mean, this could be another way the Federal Reserve could be saying this, right? But they can't come right out and say that. Everybody would panic and freak out. But if you put out this de-dollarization narrative and just constantly hammer everybody with it, well, then you might actually get people to start getting out of the dollar and lower the demand for the liabilities coming out of the Federal Reserve. They're like, thank God, we're going into this quantitative tightening. Could you imagine if we had high demand for our liabilities as we were going into quantitative tightening? It would really screw everything up, right? But by lowering the demand for the dollar at the same time you go into quantitative tightening, then you don't have that opposite effect taking place. Does that make sense? I don't know. That's kind of how I see it happening. That's what I didn't understand this whole de-dollarization. It was just too much attention brought to it. But when I think about it from that fashion, the Federal Reserve trying to meet the demand for their liabilities just to lower the demand instead of trying to meet that level of liabilities. That's a pretty good theory, right, guys? I'm going to cruise down here to the bottom to see what's going on. Oh, there's another super chat. Where was it? All right. Jacob Johnson, thank you so much for that $5, man. Very cool of you. You mentioned Greenspan said he would buy stocks when there was a certain signal, corporate debt spread. Can you explain why that makes sense? Okay. No, I can't. I can't really explain that because I'm not smart enough as a stock trader or investor to really explain why that is. But I'll say it again the way I heard it from Alan Greenspan. Now, they asked Alan Greenspan what he thought of the 2-year, 10-year inversion being a recession indicator. And he said, although that is an excellent indicator for a recession, that he would much rather look at the spread between the 5-year and 30-year. And that when that spread widens, it shows corporate management's willingness to invest, and that it's a very good sign of good economic times coming into the future. Now, why that is a sign of corporate management's willingness to invest, I have no idea. I don't know why a spread between the 5-year and 30-year occurring would signal corporate management's willingness to invest. I don't understand why that would be the case. Now, I would be a little nervous about following that particular indicator, considering that the Federal Reserve has moved into a unwinding of their balance sheet, which makes the yield curve very obscure, considering their participation within that treasury market. So if they weren't involved in the treasury market of that kind of level, then I think those indicators would be a lot more telling than they are today. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. But thank you for that. I hope that helps. Like, I mean, again, like maybe there's somebody out there who understands stock trading or just investing, who understands why that spread would indicate corporate management's willingness to invest. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I tried to figure it out. Somebody had answered it at one point. Like it seemed to have made a lot of sense, but I can't remember exactly what that answer was. So I wish I don't remember. Fear is the most powerful weapon. Absolutely, it is. How significant are gold and silver certificates overall? I don't think they have any significance anymore. Too many people listen to tell live vision. Yeah, there are still people who don't want the COVID be over. Don't want. Yeah, there is so many people out there, and like I totally understand. Like if you are concerned for yourself, right? I get that part. Right? I understand that if you want to wear a mask, if you want to get the vaccinations, if you want to distance, if you want to do all that stuff, hey, to each their own, man. You know, I mean, I don't have a problem with somebody like, hey, I want to do this for myself to protect myself, right? Cool, right? I mean, hey, glad to be in America. It's when other people are like, have you done this? How come you don't have? How come you? How come you? How come you haven't? Right? And I'm thinking, how are you, or why are you that concerned over me? Like, you don't care that I got in my car and drove to work today. Like, you didn't say, did you wear a seatbelt today? Do you have your insurance? Do you have a license? Do you have, are you, can you see okay? You got glasses on, are you okay? Like, nobody gives a care about my traveling to work. They don't care about my safety. They don't care about my health. They don't care about any of that stuff. And they don't care. I mean, I guess if you knew them personally, you probably care. But you don't care if somebody wrecks their car and dies, right? I mean, like I said, you might feel bad for them because they're a human and you feel bad that a human died. But really, there's car wrecks that happen all the time. Nobody is so concerned. Don't drive. Don't do that. Everybody's got to wear seatbelts. Everybody's got to drive. Everybody's got to do this because we got to protect everybody out there. It didn't make any sense to me, right? I mean, I tried comparing these two, and I'm like, are you concerned that those people out there aren't wearing a seatbelt, or are they wearing a seatbelt? But you're concerned about whether or not everybody's vaccinated. How about whether or not they've been drinking behind the wheel and they can wreck into somebody else and kill them? Are you that concerned about it, or are you just leaving that up for the cops to deal with? Right? I mean, this is the difference that I saw inside of it. People were delusional in their beliefs, thinking that they had to behave in a way that was somebody else's expectation. To have somebody else out there doing something to meet their expectations. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is complete nonsense. This is mass delusion taken here. Unless the United States knows how to create gold. That hate you have for homeless person who dares to have a cheap required object. The hate? I don't have hate for anybody. I made a comparison that homeless people with cell phones and food cards are not living a life as bad as some people in this world. And you think that that's hate for homeless? Okay, whatever meaning you choose to give it, All right, a flake of gold for a meal. Everybody talk about, but not many hold. Will lumber replace the dollar? All right, the Federal Reserve not wanting people to understand that they are a monopoly would throw the idea out that there's viable competition. Other YouTubers are saying banks are folding, no cash. No, banks are folding, and this is what's very interesting about it is that somebody is just like, dude, you're not talking about how there's this huge concentration of banks taking place and that all this consolidation is happening and how there's all these smaller banks are, being absorbed by the bigger ones and stuff. And I'm like, that's not new. Like, that's a trend that's been taking place for like the last 40 years. I mean, too bad I don't have maybe I'll go and find the link and I'll try to remember to put it in this video. But you can type into the Fred chart, the Federal Reserve education site there that, where you can get all the charts. Something like, I don't know, bank acquisitions or something like that. I can't remember exactly what they used to describe it, but you can see the chart on it, and you can see that banks have been like, there was a time when there was a hell of a lot more banks, smaller banks within this country than there is today, but slowly and surely, and maybe not even that slowly. I mean, over the course of the last 40 years, I don't know how many banks have been absorbed by the bigger ones, but it's a ridiculous amount, and it's a trend that is not slowing down. I mean, it's been this way for a long time. So it's not new. Like these smaller banks getting absorbed by the bigger banks. That's like it's a trend that's been the case for quite some time. And if it continues, eventually it's just going to come down to the five big banks out there, and or maybe a few others in the Federal Reserve. But that's not new. And there's going to be a liquidity crisis coming. I mean, you can see just about everybody preparing for it. I don't know what's going to happen during that time, but it seems to me that the Treasury is getting into a position in which that they are going to buy back a lot of their treasuries. And now, whether or not that's like a significant play, or if it's just a matter of trying to keep some parts of that market liquid, I don't know how intense that's going to be, but it seems to me that that's going to be a very interesting time to be in, considering that there's not a lot of history to talk about the Treasury buying back its own bonds, which again is something that like I don't think anybody is really considering at all. All right. This sounds more like Uncredible Threats, yeah. All right. Watch the monkey dance, monkey dance. We need a ledger of account that isn't run by corrupt humans. That's what BTC offers us. Well, yeah, I'm totally down for it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm trying to load up on BTC myself, and I hopefully one day will have one whole BTC in my possession, just slowly dollar cost averaging to acquire it. And if BTC does end up being the digital gold that works the world currency, which I don't believe will be, but if that happens to be the case, then one BTC is going to be worth more than, I mean, it would be worth ungodly amount. It would be like, it would be ridiculous on how much it would be worth comparatively to the rest of the, all the transactions of the world. I just don't see that happening. That's why it is, Janet Yellen's nephew doesn't understand exponential functions. Huh. I think you're onto something with the de-dollarization propaganda. Well, thank you very much, Zach. I'm glad I actually explained it in a way that it could be understood. But to me, it makes so much more sense than the actual de-dollarization, right? I mean, it doesn't, like, de-dollarization is like, to me, I'm like, how is that supposed to work? Like, I mean, I understand the idea behind it, and I understand like the hopefulness of a lot of people, and I understand the history of the gold standard. So, I mean, I get all that part of it, but I mean, I'm like a little lost on how this is actually going to take over and dethrone the dollar. Like that part I'm a little confused about, unless I think about it from this propaganda kind of situation in which that you lower the demand for the liabilities by putting out the de-dollarization narrative. And it's like, that kind of makes sense. That makes a lot more sense to me. Yeah. Hardly anyone has ever heard about de-dollarization. And I agree with that. The only people who really seem to have heard about it are people who talk economics like regularly. And I mean, maybe even, I don't even know. Maybe people aren't even talking about it on the other YouTube channels. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one who's talking about it. But I mean, I find a lot of articles on it. And I mean, I see it come up a lot. And I see people, bringing up the BRICS nations a lot, especially in the comment section. So I figured it was something that we should probably study up on. All right. Since both IMF and China raised the issue in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. Every crypto shill wants to exit with dollars after telling the world that the Bitcoin is going to save us all from the establishment. like maybe it's just me. Am I the only, like, I mean, I know a lot of people call me like a Fed shill and stuff like that. I don't know why, I'm just trying to explain things the way I see it. But I guess if you don't talk negatively about the Fed and you don't talk positively about a gold standard, then somehow you believe in, Keynesian economics or something like that. That's not the case. Like, I believe in the ownership of gold. I believe in free market capitalism. I actually believe in a gold standard. What I don't believe is that the people here in the United States can handle a gold standard in a way that doesn't fall them right into poverty. Like, I'm cool with it. Like, I mean, I'm cool with the gold standard. I know how, like, that operates. I understand how to operate within that system, or at least I believe that I could operate within that system. But I think most people would end up suffering really bad with it in a way that I don't want to see. Like, I mean, they just can't handle it. If we were an industrious nation, I would be all for it. I'd be like, yes, let's do it. When things really get going, you'll be able to use your crypto to buy whatever instead of selling into fiat. 1 BTC will be worth 1 BTC. All right, my bank is offering 5.5 CDs, 16-month. Come with a statement today. Isn't BTC a fiat or for a fiat simple exchange? No. BTC is a computer program that has a limited amount, and it's a distributed ledger system. Fiat currencies can be printed up at will and distributed out to the world and have legal tender laws attached to it, forcing people to use it. Bitcoin is not any of that stuff. Bitcoin is not even remotely close to a fiat. Like, it doesn't even, to me, like, they're not even like the same thing anymore, Like, fiat currency, BTC, gold, they're very different, but BTC and gold are more relatable than BTC and fiat would be. Masks are on. Yeah. Virtue signaling is out of control. Could Gresham's law apply to consumer goods? Hear me out. Bad consumer goods chases out good. Bad goods are of lesser quality, but somehow marketed more successfully to consumers. I can see the parallels. Okay, well, no, there's actually, I can give you an example of that very thing. Now, I know this might be like kind of like a very simple kind of comparison, and maybe some people will just kind of shake their heads going, that's kind of really funny. But there's something, it's a tool, right? So we I work at a hardware store, lumber yard, we sell all kinds of construction tools. So there's a stapler out there, right? They usually refer to them as hammer tackers, or, I've heard some people call them like slap guns or something like that. But basically it's for tacking down felt paper, and it's a stapler. It's just a handle, and you just whack it and it'll drop a staple wherever you hit it, right? So, putting up felt paper, roofing paper, whatever, they'll use these staplers. There's one particular one out there, I'll just use the brand name. It's called Duofast, right? And Duofast staplers were by far the best. Like, everybody talked about how awesome they worked. They had parts that were replaceable on them. They were quite expensive, but everybody loved them, and they were just killer tools. And everybody, like, that's the one that everybody bought. Like, that was the one on the shelf for a longest time. But then, like, there was the cheaper competitor one that some people would buy just, because it was a cheaper version of it. But now what you find is that those Duofast, those really good staplers, are hardly anywhere. Nobody really buys them anymore. Occasionally I will find somebody come in looking for a box of the staples because they still have one of those staplers. But for the most part, everybody has moved into the cheaper Chinese versions or whatever that are, half or even a third of the price or even less. And the good quality, higher quality tool is pretty much disappeared. Nobody buys them anymore. And it was price point out, right? I mean, here you can buy the same tool or a tool that does essentially the same job for $20, or you can buy one for $80, right? So it was just no comparison. I mean, everybody just bought the $20 tool, and the $80 one just basically left the shelf because nobody would buy it. And so, yeah, there's an example of that very thing happening. Which bank? Don't give him any ideas with your driving idea. Any ammo? What are you talking about? All right. Which bank? Ally has 5 CD, 18 month. Okay. If you had $1,000, no car, about to be evicted, and only work random 1099 jobs online, what would you do? Well, okay. What would you do if you had to start all over again? I don't know, man. I mean, I would go get a 9 to 5 job. That's what I would probably do. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people don't like working for other people, but that's the easiest way to go get money is to go work for somebody else. And a 9 to 5 job is probably the easiest way to go get a job, right? So, I mean, if you're asking me what to do, and this is the situation you're in with $1,000 and getting evicted, I would go get a regular job and start working that for a while to get a steady paycheck in. If you can get a steady paycheck in, then you can actually do something because you have you can budget your money to actually do something, right? So, I mean, to try and instantaneously make money so that you can live, that's very difficult without having a 9 to 5 job on it. Over time, you can build all kinds of things that will make money, right? There's all kinds of online businesses that you could start. You could start a YouTube channel and build one of those up. It's not exactly easy. It takes a long time, and then you have to be dedicated to what you're doing out there. But just like anything, it's just a matter of working the angle that you find. Find that niche and go with it. But in the position that you're in and you're asking me, I would go get a 9 to 5 job and go get a steady paycheck in and then figure out what I'm supposed to do. It's called mass formation psychosis in the United States has plenty of gold. Some hobos have shotguns like in Hobo with a Shotgun. Yui, I'm enjoying ceviche with my Peruvian wife and learning that's my currency at the moment. Well, yeah. And so, sitting around enjoying some good food in a good environment, you got like music going or something like that. Like, what else do you really need? Like, I mean, you can make that situation a little bit better with fancier stuff or something like that, but really, what else is there? I mean, good food and music and a view, and like, I don't know. Like, I mean, people are like, man, I wish I had all this money so I could do all this stuff. And I'm like, what do you want to do that's beyond that? Like, I mean, you can go and get some excitement for a minute, and go and get a thrill or, maybe go and visit a place that you've never been before or something like that. That makes it kind of exciting, get for the newness of it or the thrill or something. But really, there's nothing really else out there, right? It's music, food, environment, view, stuff like that. That's what brings pleasures. Like, even like what is wealth, right? Food, conveniences, and pleasures of life. That's it. That's wealth. It isn't money. Money buys the stuff that you enjoy, right? Money buys spontaneity. Money buys like the thrill and the excitement of things. But really, like the things that are enjoyable is just, they're very simple, You have low frame rate on this live. You have low frame rate? What does that mean? I am the only one seeing a blurry image. Oh man. It's not Fiat. Where is Sam Bankman? UE, thank you. Yeah. BTC has a form of payment, does not make you anonymous. It's tracked at every transaction. BTC as a store of value is only worth as much as where the pyramid scheme, which is what it is, be worth that. People call Bitcoin a pyramid scheme. I don't see that. I mean, like, I would see Bitcoin being as much as a pyramid scheme as gold being a pyramid scheme. Like, I don't see the pyramid scheme in it. New trucks today cost more than an effing house. $120,000 for a Dodge Ram. Where do people get their money? By selling drugs? I don't get it. I don't get it either. I don't get it either, because I see a lot of vehicles out there that all look way nicer than my vehicle. And I think about like how much it costs, and I just like, oh my gosh, like what? No way. Like, I'll have to wait for my vehicles to break down before I finally break down and buy a vehicle. And I just keep buying cheap vehicles and getting a hold of them and park them and just wait, right? I paid $4,900 for my 2001 GMC Sierra with about 114,000 miles on her. This truck is far more dependable than a $120,000 computerized Dodge Ram. Dodges are junk. Everyone knows it. The height of the liquidity crisis is going to be solid, brick by brick. All right, I bought a really cool move-in ready 1890s commercial storefront with 2 apartments above it in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, back in 2017 for $40,000. Michigan has dirt cheap real estate. The summers are nice. We lost 98% of the dollar value since we got off the gold standard in 1971. Now we say we lost 98% of the, like, did you lose 98% of the value of the dollar? No, that's from like 100 years ago, right? So I'm not saying that it's not like happening. I mean, that is definitely happening within it, but you yourself, you didn't lose 98% of the value off of the dollar. That's just what's happened over the last 100 years. Again, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because it was a bad thing that's really happened to the dollar, especially if you consider savings over that time. I mean, generational savings can't be done in cash, has to be done in some other kind of asset or something like that. So yeah, true, it has lost its value over the last 100 years, but nobody's lived 100 years to actually, deal with the consequences of it. All right. Chris Handsome 28. I would move in with family, get an e-bike to have transportation to get to work. After gainfully employ, start banking relationships with credit unions, learn to leverage lines. There you go. All right. I had a brand new Dodge while my Sierra got fixed. I like my GMC. How about the US dollar not being accepted in other jurisdictions? Okay, well, that's very well could happen, right? And then, those other nations are going to have to figure out what it is that they need to do in order to do their world trade with, right? And again, like, I'm not trying to say that ain't going to happen, but you yourself, just try and get out of the dollar. Just try and get out and not use the dollar, right? Go to the store where they like, well, we accept dollars, right? And it was just like, I'm sure if you talk to like the store manager or the owner or something like that, you might be able to figure out whether or not you could trade maybe some silver bullion or some other kind of work or do something like that. And you might be able to get those transactions done that you were looking for. Well, the rest of the world would suffer that same thing, right? Just try it. Just try and get out of the dollar yourself and see how hard it is, all right? It won't be that easy. And the rest of the world would be facing that exact same thing. John, hi Simon, hello. I have a Duo Fast. It's Duo Dope. Yeah. How would Gresham's Law work in a country that has UBI that can only be spent on things made in its own country? Okay. Well, like, if that happened in the United States, then everybody would be broke because you wouldn't buy anything. Because there wouldn't be anything to buy. Right? I mean, there would be a handful of things, I guess, but there's not enough here in the United States made by the United States to support all the people within the United States, right? So we would all be broke. I mean, we would be broke because we wouldn't be able to buy anything because it wouldn't work, right? You would need money that can buy stuff that is here, that's pretty much made in other nations. So I mean, what you put up there is a huge, like, what if, like, I mean, hypothetical. It's like, it doesn't, there's no real basis behind any of that stuff. It's just a kind of, I mean, it's just a guess, Cool. Look at the big brain on Jesus. Okay. Graham Campbell. USD will be stable because it will be based on consumer spending. Americans spend more than per head than any other country, so it will lose reserve currency but remain part of the export trade. Huh. Okay. What if the government knew where the mother lode of all mother loads is, so GLD supply was not an issue? Okay. Again, that's a big what if, I mean, I guess you could go with like, what was it, Bix Weir's kind of idea that there's a bunch of gold in the Grand Canyon or something like that. And I guess if that was the case, then there would be, plenty of gold that you can continue on with the importing of mass amounts of stuff and exporting of your gold. But again, that's a hypothetical, right? That's not a situation that is occurring, I had a duo-fast coin nailer thing jammed way too often, then broke. Huh. Just buying a new gun. I now have Hitachi much better. Yeah. All right, I'm getting out of retirement and finding more income streams, and I'm happy to work if I can get hired in my expertise since I am out of the element here. Thanks for the education, Mr. Uneducated. Well, thank you very much, Jackie. I appreciate the comment. People are pissed about the tyranny. The fear is gone. Oh, I don't think so. There's, okay, being pissed is part of being fear. Yeah, I mean, it's almost, it's a very closely related emotion. Can't the government crack down and make Bitcoin illegal if push comes to shove? Well, yeah, I mean, they can, you can do anything. I mean, it's like, again, that's another hypothetical. Like, you can make anything. They made coke and marijuana illegal too, but it didn't stop anybody. I mean, in fact, I think if you take something that somebody wants, right? If you take something that somebody wants and you make it illegal, then you just cause the price of it to go way up. Sex, drugs, firearms, anything. Like, just take anything that somebody wants and make it illegal, and then boom, watch the price go up. And, there was a time when, I mean, even, Cantillon talks about this in his essay, when a nation has moved into that position in which that they have imported all this gold due to their manufacturing base, but then they start moving into luxuries and they're exporting their gold, they find that, like, the nation realizes it. They're like, oh crap, we're not making anything for ourselves. And if we continue on, in this fashion, we are going to import all this stuff and export all our gold. Make it illegal to export gold. That way we can keep the gold in this nation, and then we'll figure out what we need to do. So they make exporting of gold like punishable by death, right? That's what these nations do in order to try and keep the gold there. Now, you got a rise of a new business, exporting gold out of the country, because if you can get the gold out of the country, you're going to get paid a premium to do it. Right? So now you find that the gold is worth a hell of a lot more when you have the punishment of death attached to it, because the risk goes up, and with risk comes reward. So if you take anything that somebody wants, you make it illegal, you cause the price to go up. And I think Bitcoin would be very much in that same fashion, right? Just saying. Bitcoin is not for privacy, it's for decentralized money. Geez, easy on the Dodge. Yeah, I hear you, right? I don't know why Dodge gets picked on so much. Like, it's weird. I hear it a lot, too. All right, with Bitcoin, the government has the sole right to regulate commerce. It can make illegal any forms of payment other than the dollar at any time. That's not true, right? I mean, you don't have to accept the dollar. You can accept anything you want. Even as a store, you don't have to accept dollars. There's no law requiring anybody anywhere to accept dollars. I think the only people who are required to accept dollars is the government for taxes, right? Everybody else voluntarily uses dollars. Straight up, just look it up. The Federal Reserve says it. Like, just type into the Google search, is it illegal to, deny dollars, or are dollars a requirement or something like that? And you're going to find that dollars are not required, right? That we voluntarily use dollars and we suffer the consequences from doing that. But since there's nothing else and nobody really knows of anything else, and they tricked us by having silver certificates looking just like Federal Reserve notes and pulling all the silver certificates out, leaving just Federal Reserve notes in the system, we all voluntarily choose to use the Federal Reserve note. But there's no requirement for us to do that. You know that, right? All right. The only way to build wealth is to invest in companies. We live in a free world capital growth society. It is the same reason why the dollar will always be daddy. There's no doubt about it. I wouldn't say that it's always going to be daddy, I wouldn't say that, but as far as I can tell, it's going to be for a while until I see something else come up. Hey, thank you very much, Mike, for the $10. Thanks for reading my comments. Ceviche is amazing, and so is your insight. Loving the simple life. Well, good for you, Mike, and enjoy that ceviche. This could be why the digital economy could be pushed on the people, because of the low physical material, and you get people to dish out their hard-earned money for pixels on a screen. That's the reality. Cheers, Yui. All right. Well, cheers, Segamonofo. I love some of these names. All right. The Gresham Law question for the country having UBI. The point of it was that the incentive to bring back production to your country or region working with UBI. Okay. To me, that sounds like segregated basic income. That doesn't sound like universal basic income. Universal basic income means that everybody gets this money to do whatever they want with, right? That's universal basic income. If it's anything other than that, like we're only going to give it to a certain group, or we're only give it to people so they can use it for certain things, or we're only going to do it for a certain amount of time, that's segregated basic income. Straight up. Like, I don't know how else to say it, but that's what it is. And by giving it this name of universal, you're really like, basically trying to pull off some trickery, like the Patriot Act, right? Same thing. The guy with 1,000 should file Chapter 7, spend 15 hours a day looking for multiple jobs, and also rent a temp-controlled storage until that's 24/7 space cheap, office space cheap. It's so terrible how little people understand BTC. All right, make fun of those Kias kids can steal with USB stick from learning on a video on TikTok. Dollars are legally required to be accepted as payment on debt. No, okay. No, they are legal tender for payments of debt, but you are not required to accept those, right? That is, there is no requirement for you to use USD. Now, if you sign a piece of paper saying, I promise to pay you in USD, that's different, right? So, I mean, that's like if you sign a contract saying you're going to do it, that's differently than saying, hey, I want to buy this item off of you, right? I don't have to accept your dollars, right? I mean, if you got an item right there in front of me you want to buy that I own, and I say, I want to be paid in yen, I want to be paid in gold, I want to be paid in Bitcoin, and somebody says, no, I got dollars, no thanks. I can do that. I have every legal requirement to do that, right? But if I signed a contract saying I promise to pay you in dollars, that's different. That's, now you got a contract saying you're going to pay in dollars. And so, I mean, because all debts have probably been written that way, it doesn't mean they have to be, And again, that was a voluntary thing that was taking place. Silver certificates don't get you silver any longer. And not that I know of. I haven't figured out how to get any silver out of it. Hey, Yui, what are your thoughts on gold chains as a sort of emergency fund that you can wear around your neck? I don't know. Like, I mean, I have a silver chain here, right? And so it's like maybe 2 ounces of silver. If I sold the whole thing, I could get it, right? I mean, no problem. I can just sell for spot price or whatever weight value of it. But if you have a gold chain and you're thinking, man, I need an emergency and I need to clip off some of this and sell it, like, who are you going to sell that little bit to? Right? A jeweler would probably be a good shot, like, because they're going to be like, yeah, I can take this and melt it down and make something else out of it. But to try and sell a little chunk of gold chain to somebody saying, hey, I got this gold here, you want to buy it for weight value or something, you might find somebody who's like a gold enthusiast or something who might want to hold on to gold. But for the most part, you're going to have a difficult time trying to liquidate that little chunk of chain. If it was a gold coin, it would be a little easier, right? Because then you have something that has like like visually can be confirmed on what it is. It's just like, yeah, that's a gold coin. You don't have to worry about its purity or whether or not it's, what it is. For the most part, you can have some confidence in knowing what it is that you're looking at. And by that, you can also compare it to like, online sales. You can say how much other people are selling it for. So it gives you a little bit more confidence on what it is that you have there that you can liquidate, especially if you're on the other end trying to receive this particular item. So in my opinion, like having a gold chain that you could clip off little pieces of might be a little more burdensome than just simple as just break it off and sell it, right? So again, bullion, in my opinion, would be a much better place to go to as far as being able to unload that stuff to be more liquid anyway. Like, if you take a silver coin, a silver bullion, especially like a silver eagle, I mean, you could go to just about any town, and if you didn't find a pawn shop or a jeweler or a coin dealer to sell it to, you could probably just start walking into the bars and just ask people. It's just like, hey man, I got a silver coin, I need, some gas, will you buy this thing off for $20? You're probably going to find somebody who'll give you $20 for it, right? It'll be pretty easy to liquidate that. So those are the things that I consider when I think about like how easy or bartering or, security or something like that. All right. Sitting on lots of U.S. coins from the 1800s, I found digging holes in my backyard as a kid because I loved the movie Holes. That's funny. That was a good movie too. Is there anything in counterfeit laws that would make it legal to ban other currencies? I don't know. I mean, there was like, oh gosh, I can never remember his name, and I bring him up so often too. He developed the Liberty dollars, right? There were like these silver coins that had like a dollar denomination on it. That's what got him in trouble, is because he actually put that dollar denomination on it. But there were like these silver coins that also had like a silver, like a certificate that would go with them. So like you could either have the coin or you could go to like, his warehouse, his shop, and this coin would sit on a shelf and then a certificate could come out. So you could actually have like a bill, like a silver certificate. And these things were being used. Like there was some towns that were like just loving these Liberty dollars that he was issuing out. And things were going really good with them up until the government came in and seized all this stuff, saying that he was counterfeiting. And it was because he put that dollar denomination on it that really got him in trouble. So yeah, there is laws out there from preventing another currency from coming in, because this was silver. I mean, this was like, Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution says no state shall coin anything but gold and silver as a legal tender and payment of debt. So here he was putting out these silver coins with the dollar denomination on it, and boom, he got busted for counterfeiting. All right. Oh man, what time is it? We're an hour and 38 minutes into this. All right. Some places require merchants accept cash, like New York City during the Koof residents, were upset shops said cards only, which violated an ordinance or law. I would imagine that you could probably make an ordinance within a city that might do it. I don't know how that would look like constitutionally, but like as far as a federal law on it, I can't see that. I don't see anything like happening like that part of it. But yeah, I mean, if there was an ordinance or even a revised statute or something like that on it, then I guess there could be like some legal capabilities of requiring dollars to be used or be accepted. I never really thought about it from that fashion. I kind of think of things more from a constitutional federal part of it, but locally, I guess that could be the case, Look at what they're trying to ban or outlaw. Happy Saturday, friends. Oh, yeah. What time is it? We should go head over to Mike in the Night. We should go watch his show for a while. Maybe I'll charge my phone up and give him a call, and we'll go head over and hang out on Mike in the Night. Nothouse, that's it. Bernard Van Nothouse. Thank you so much. Physical art, I need it. If entire system politically dishonest. Yeah. Have you heard of gold backs? Yeah, the gold back bucks. Yeah, I have a few of those. Some fans had actually sent me a few of those things, and those are pretty cool. So if you haven't seen those, they look like a dollar bill or something like that, but they're made of metal. Like they actually have gold made right into the dollar bill. So it's not a representation of gold. It is gold, right? And the idea behind it is that you can use these things like paper currency, which I think is a great idea for, behind it. But as far as like actually being used in commerce, again, like I find it to be limiting to the most industrious nations or states or people out there, and they would end up with all the gold bucks, and everybody else would be denied the money. But I like the idea behind them, and I have a few of them. I think they're cool. Appreciate the input, Yui. Yeah, you bet. Land, I need it. All right, you're assuming so much. A shame, Brennan. You don't lose anything if you don't freak out and sell. Okay. Who's Mike in the Night? Oh, Mike Martin. Mike Martin. Mike in the Night. Mike Martin was. This guy is so cool. He's a friend of mine from years and years ago, and when I first got started on YouTube, I had I don't even think I had 1,000 subscribers yet, and the channel was just starting to grow. And I was getting a little bit of attention. Like I said, I think I was under 1,000 subscribers. And Mike gets a hold of me one day, right? And I had watched his show a couple of times. This is YouTube channel. And he gets a hold of me. He sends me a message. And he's like, dude, I would love to have you on my channel, on my show for an interview. And I went and I checked out his channel, and he had actually given me a shout out in one of his videos going, you guys got to check out the Uneducated Economist, right? So I was really taken back. I'm like, oh man, yeah, you bet. Like I have never been asked anything like this, right? I mean, I'm still kind of amazed that people were even, watching my YouTube channel. And so Mike invites me on to a show for an interview, and I was so nervous. It was like the first time I had ever been interviewed, and like I didn't know like if I was going to be able to even answer any questions that he had or anything from it. But we do the interview. It was so awesome. It was like one of the greatest moments, because after that I started getting a lot of requests for interviews, and then the lumber market started to take off, and then I started getting a lot more requests to do interviews. And so really I have to give it to Mike. He was like the first person to really give me that shout out, that push that really got the channel's momentum moving. And so I have to give it to Mike. He was like really instrumental as far as like the channel taking off. He was like right at the very beginning, and he doesn't say much about it. He's like, oh man, no, it wasn't no big deal, man. It was great that he came on the show, but really it meant a lot to me. He did it made a huge difference for me. All right, San Francisco just did this with cashless business, claim it hurts the homeless and lower classes. Yeah, I do remember hearing about that within San Francisco, now that you guys are mentioning that. But again, like, that's a localized area. That's not the government or the federal or even the Federal Reserve, requiring that. That's like like a city ordinance that's doing that, which a lot of people, and it also kind of goes to show how like the Constitution really works and how like local laws are are supersede like the federal, right? It's one of the reasons how like some states can have legalized marijuana and other states can't. It's because it's not up to the federal government to dictate whether or not you can make that illegal in that state. You can make it illegal for interstate transfer of stuff, right? Because they're in charge of that kind of thing. But they can't really tell a state what it is that it can and can't do like that. That's not part of the Constitution. Although a lot of people believe that, but it's not the case. What's his channel about? Mike's channel is mostly he talks about real estate. That's his kind of big ticket. He talks a lot about real estate. He talks a lot about I guess like when COVID and everything else was kicking in, he talked a lot about like, COVID restrictions and government restrictions and stuff like that coming down. So he talks a lot about that kind of thing. He's got a lot of energy, that's for sure. All right. Okay, what time is it? 7:02. Alrighty, guys. I'm going to give it a 15 minutes and then I'm going to head out. All right, blockchain technology is outstanding, works in lockstep with all the assets I've said, equity, parsing, in a sense. It's cool people tend to not react so well to things they don't understand. Just a suggestion that you learn before you talk. Dishes every day. Have you ever thought about cleaning houses for cash? That would be funny. Alright. Was that it for the comments? Oh, nice. Oh, no, we got a few more here. Okay. I just watched your talk with Owen Benjamin. It was great. He was surprisingly positive. It's really easy to get into the habit of just complaining about everything. Any plans on having him on again? Well, yeah, actually, I had emailed him. We had emailed each other back and forth, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago. And I had talked to him. I was like, hey, man, you want to come back on the show? He says, yeah, man, let's do it anytime. And I haven't really been trying to do the interviews lately. I don't know what exactly has gotten into me, but I had some other things going on. So I did that run of interviews for a while, which was a lot of fun, but it was kind of difficult to get those things scheduled. Because I have a day job, so most of the time everybody who wants to do interviews wants to do them during the week, and they generally don't want to do them after 5 o'clock, which means that I need to find a break in the middle of my day in order to get out here and do an interview. And what a lot of people don't know is that those interviews that I was doing on my channel here with like Peter Schiff and all the, Lynette Zhang and all those were being done on my lunch break. Like I busted out of work, get in my car, run out, set up the camera, everything, get everything going, do the interview, and then haul back into work, and then go back in and do my job again. So I was literally doing those things on my lunch break. And again, it was like, it was kind of tough to get those things scheduled out there and make sure the timing worked out without creating a bunch of havoc at work, trying to say, hey man, can you please, reschedule this lunch so that I can do my interview for my YouTube channel and stuff. They're like, oh, come on, bro, So, but I think that's actually kind of cool too, that I was doing it that way. But it would be nice if I had the ability to set up and do interviews that wasn't necessarily in my car. Because again, I have to do the interview in a way that my assistant, her name's Chandler sets up the Zoom meeting from her location, records it, and then uploads the video to the channel. And, again, we were just kind of, she was just doing it for just her, just for fun on the side, and so it was taking, time from her as well. It was just I had to make sure that she was scheduled at the same time that, the interviewee would be able to do it, and then I had to take the break from lunch, and it's like trying to coordinate all this stuff. It was just like, oh God, I'm pulling my hair out trying to get all these things done. So, but it was cool because I really think like I actually surprised myself with the interviews because like a lot of times like the one that I did with George Gammon, that was incredible. Like he really took like the questions that I had very seriously, and he really started going into depth about some of the things, some of the economic, events that were happening. And he literally was going so deep into some of his answers that I was losing track of what it was that he was saying, right? I'm like, oh my God, he's about ready to finish up this answer, and I got to ask him another question here, and I had no idea what it was that he was talking about. I mean, I had an idea what he was talking about, but it was so in depth, like I had to like sit there and like really kind of ponder what it was that he was, what he was putting out there. But I found that like I do interviews, like I can conduct the interview really well. Like I think I keep it flowing really well. I get the questions going out there. I can, keep it entertaining. And what's cool about it is that out of all the interviews I did, I didn't edit any of them. Like it was go, hit record, just like all my videos, and we blast it through in one take. And, I find that to be pretty cool. Most people edit out all the uhs and ums, or, maybe like, a question that didn't get answered quite right, but I don't do that. Like the Uneducated Economist is, you got to be on your A game because I'm not going to edit, I just don't edit the videos. So, anyway, back on. All right, what's on your watch list if the recession brings good deals? I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is that I would be watching, like specifically. Like I'm gonna pick that up when it gets down to this price. Like I don't have anything quite like that. I'm assuming that during that time of a recession or liquidity issues, if we have those coming in at the end of the year or beginning of next year, kind of when I'm thinking that'll happen, I'm assuming that stock prices will probably be going down at that time. And it's then that I'd probably, try to come up with a decent list of dividend paying stocks at the time and buy into those companies. As far as right now, I couldn't list any of them. Possibly Verizon. I think they have a decent dividend yield to it. Definitely Altria. I mean, it's the only one that I've really been buying right now. They have a decent dividend yield to them. Those are the stocks that I would like to buy into, just simply because I think by owning a stock and having it pay you to own it, I think is a great deal. And then if you can get the appreciation out of the price as well. So, I mean, that would be kind of the move that I would go to. Again, like if gold and silver was to fall dramatically, I would probably jump into some of those as well. Just because, that's kind of a position that makes me feel safe and comfortable, by owning precious metals. And then if it was possible and the opportunity was there, I might get into real estate. The only thing I see about real estate is that everybody's wanting to get into real estate. And so like when everybody's on one side of the boat, I probably would move over to some place that nobody's really looking, or less people are looking at. But again, like it's going to be more about seeing what's available at the time. I think that's probably going to be better to focus in on. Looking into who developed the hashing algorithm Bitcoin uses. I'm not suggesting you buy BTC right now, by the way. Oh, talking to Shane. A good interviewer is someone who listens and doesn't talk over the other person. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one thing that I definitely found is just intently listen to everything that's saying. Because really, like to me, when I'm interviewing somebody, I'm looking for them to bring the information. I'm not trying to debate them. I'm not trying to, to find out whether they're right or wrong or something like that. Like that's not anything that I'm trying to do. I am literally wanting them to bring us, the audience, the information. And then so like if they have, even if they say something that I disagree with, I'm not going to argue with them about it or anything like that. I would probably even pick it a little bit further to say, hey, can you elaborate a little bit further on this so we can have a better understanding of how you feel about it? That would be my position on doing an interview, mainly because I want people to be comfortable talking to me on my channel. Like, I don't want people to be nervous coming onto my channel and saying, oh man, don't go on the Uneducated Economist, he'll tear you up and try to debate you or something like that. That's the last thing that I would want. I want people to feel comfortable coming here to do interviews. All right. New York City business can put an instant debit card machine in their shop that allows the customer to instantly convert cash to a card. Only then a store can choose not to take cash. No. Maybe in New York City that might be the case, but no, that's definitely not the case. I mean, there's plenty of stores around that can refuse cash. Yes, definitely can tell the authenticity. I'll watch that George Gammon one. It was good. It was probably one of the better interviews that I had done. I like the George Gammon interview just because it was very informative. Like, he really dove into it. I really enjoyed doing that one. I enjoyed the Owen Benjamin one. That one was a lot of fun to do as well. I don't know. I don't know if I have necessarily like a favorite interview, but I definitely like those two. The Peter Schiff interview was a lot of fun just because he's such a big star and everybody knows who he was and everything. And to actually have him on my show for an hour-long interview was just like, oh my gosh, it was just like, I was very honored to be able to interview Peter Schiff. So that one was pretty cool too. Lynette Zhang, she is just like, I love Lynette. I just absolutely love Lynette. She is just like, she feels like family to me, And so I really enjoyed talking with Lynette too, but I just enjoyed talking with her anyway, so it didn't matter if it was an interview. Alright. BTC is not an anonymous form. Okay, yeah, we know that. Treasuries could resell the central bank digital currency immediately if they wanted. There we go. Old junk houses, maybe from estate sales in your area, could be a good real estate opportunity for you. Yeah, the only problem is that there is some junk houses, but people live in them. Like, there is no junk houses that come up for sale, really. The fixer-upper opportunities around here really kind of lost. I mean, it's probably been about 10 years or so, and there's not a lot of fixer-upper opportunities around here anymore. Like I said, there is the ones that people still live in that, if they happen to pass away or move or do something there might be one of those that come up, but there's not a lot here. Most of the houses around here have been fixed up and remodeled and turned into nicer homes. The area has gotten quite wealthy. It's come quite affluent. Surprisingly, we didn't even, those of us who grew up around here didn't quite see it even happening. Like, we didn't even realize it. We just turned around one day and was just like, man, nobody can afford to live here anymore. The houses are expensive. Jobs that, normal jobs don't cut it like they used to. And, we kind of just all of a sudden realized it. There's a huge hospital district growing around here. The retirement community is getting huge. Somebody was saying it the other day that nobody wants to work, and I just had to explain to them, it's not that nobody wants to work, it's that there's nobody here who does work. Like, everybody who's here is retired, or not in the working class kind of thing, they're remote working or something, All right. Memory man, 100%, huh? If realize other cryptos are finished, U.S. will never allow it. Do you think it would be wise to buy a new Corolla or Civic as a new car? No, I don't find buying a new car to be a wise decision ever. Unless you're like just super, unless you got a bunch of money, you don't care, like at that point, then it doesn't matter, go ahead and buy a car. But no, like, I think cars are a huge waste of money. I think that they are disposable. Like, cars are cheap. You should be able to buy a car really cheap, drive it around for a year or whatever, and toss it out and get another cheap car. I mean, I've done it for a long time, and I know it isn't exactly like a fun experience when, they break down or, something happens to it. But I don't stress about my vehicles. Like, I don't, like, there was a time when I had a crappy car and I didn't have any money and I was in a bad situation. That was bad, right? I wished I had a new car then. I dreamed of having a new car at that time because of how much, how frustrating and exhausting it was to have an old vehicle that would break down. But where I sit today, I mean, this is a 98 Ford Explorer that was given to me by my parents, right? I have a 2000, or I have a 99 Toyota Corolla and a 2001 S10, right? These other two vehicles aren't that great. They both run. That's awesome. If anything should happen with one of my vehicles, I got a backup vehicle. I like driving this thing around, but really I'm just driving it around for a little while, and I'll probably go and start driving the Toyota around again here in a little bit. But I just drive these lesser vehicles around. And if anything should happen to one of them, I mean, I don't really feel that heartbroken. Like, somebody sideswiped the Toyota and I was upset for like 30 seconds. I mean, I saw it on video. My reaction was on video from it. I'm like, man, somebody sidewiped my car and took the mirror off. Oh, well, uneducated economist here. Let's talk about this, whatever it was I was talking about. I can't remember. But, that's the type of like relief that I have by driving old vehicles, is that I don't stress about them, I mean, again, like, whatever happens, happens. I don't think, I don't put any money into them. I put a little bit of maintenance. It's a great way to be, save an insane amount of money doing it that way. Won't government just declare payment via unstable coin as legal tender? Okay. I don't think they're going to force anybody to do anything. And the reason why they don't force anybody to do anything is because Americans have the tendency to be incredibly resistant, right? But if you do something and they just don't even notice, like you attach, you start using stable coin and they work just like anything else. And anytime you're using your debit card, you're using stable coin. That's the way that they force people into it, right? Is by just doing it and people just not even like realizing it's happening. But if they actually made an announcement, you're going to have to turn in all your cash and start using stablecoin, then people would just immediately start resisting them. Yeah. All right. I'm going to jet out, everybody. It has been 2 hours. It's been a wonderful live stream. We have 177 of you watching, which is just amazing. And 191 likes. I love it. Thank you so much for hitting that like button when you came into the stream. For those of you still watching, if you haven't heard, I am heading to Vegas at the end of the month to go speak at the Stock Plus Silver Symposium. So I'm really looking forward to that. I left a link down in the description so you can get your tickets there off of that link. Again, I'm really looking forward to that. It's awesome. I've been hoping to do more speaking engagements in my future, and here it comes. So I'm so looking forward to that. Saved about $4,000 under retail used. Oh yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, and thank you for the $26.99. That is very cool of you for supporting the channel like you did. I can never thank you enough for all the support for the channel, especially recently with the algorithm from YouTube. Just really, like, I mean, I can see it. At one point for a while there, I wasn't getting any views on the channel. Like, the algorithm completely removed all my videos from the playlists of everybody. But what do? You just kind of keep pushing forward. I'm not changing the way I do anything, and we'll see what happens next from it. Matt, what were you asking? Will your speech be on your channel? I don't think I'm actually going to be doing like a speaking speech like that. I think more of what I'm being invited down to do is to join in on some speaking panels. So we're going to be discussing maybe, like, I don't know, they might be asking me about supply chains or lumber industry kind of stuff. But I think that's more of what they're hoping that I was going to do down there. Now, there was like talk that, hey, if I wanted to kind of blast out, 15, 20 minutes of, maybe Cantillon theory or, something that I've been working on just recently, kind of explaining some of that stuff, and then have like a Q&A kind of thing afterwards, then, he would give me that kind of time. So I don't know exactly what it is that I'm going to be doing down there, but I figure if I can't do this just from the hip, shoot from the hip kind of thing, then I probably shouldn't be doing this at all. So I think I'm going to be cool going down there without any rehearsal or any practice or even any understanding of what it is that I'm going to go up there and speak about, but just grab the mic and go for it, right? I mean, it's in me already, right? I don't need to figure out what I need to do ahead of time. I just need to grab the mic and do it. And that's really what I'm going to go for. So if you can, put it on your channel. Yeah, I will. I will try and record as much as I can while I'm there. I'm going to ask and see if I can do like even live streaming, while I'm there, just live stream, the event, or at least record some of it. But yeah, I'll definitely try and get some of the speaking engagement or whatever it is that I'm doing on the video onto the channel. So G. Edward Griffin will be there. Yes, G. Edward Griffin is the keynote speaker. He is like really, out of the list of everybody that I could ever put on a list of people I would want to meet, G. Edward Griffin is probably the last one. Like I've met everybody I've wanted to, I mean, I've always wanted to meet, like ever since I started studying economics, I wanted to meet Peter Schiff and Ron Paul. I didn't actually get to meet Ron Paul, but I got to speak on the same stage to the same audience as him, so I figured that was pretty close. He had a lot of security, and it was just, I just didn't want to go and push my way in there. But yeah, G. Edward Griffin, he wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island, which is like really the only book that I have ever read on economics, other than Cantillon's essay. So I owe a lot to G. Edward Griffin. I mean, really, I don't think I would be here doing this today if it wasn't for that book. So I really owe him a great debt of gratitude for that. All right, bring the dice. Yeah. Have you met Mark Faber yet? No, but that would be okay. So you just put one on my list. All right, I definitely need to meet Mark Faber. I'd like to meet Mark Faber and I don't know, like, gosh, I don't know. I guess there is, kind of a few people out there that, would be fun to meet. Gerald Celente. I think that would be fun to meet Gerald Celente. I met Doug Casey. I met Chris Munson. I've met like almost everybody. So yeah, Mark Faber, he'd definitely be one of them. Mark Faber is hilarious. Yeah, he is. Mark Faber said one of the funniest things that I had ever heard. He said that you can stimulate the economy with prostitutes and beer. I'm doing my part, right? Yeah? I thought that was so funny when he said that in an interview one time. All right, I'll be listening to him since before 9/11 on Alex Jones, back when he wasn't compromised. Yeah. How's the truck? How many miles on that bad boy? My Crown Vic pushing 206. This has 92,867 miles on it. 92,000 on a 98 Ford Explorer. The back seat I don't think has ever been sat in. Alex compromised, not G. Edward Griffin, yeah. Yeah, okay, I'm going to say one more thing just because we're just still talking here. I liked Alex Jones. I really, really enjoyed listening to a lot of his stuff. The only thing that got to me about it is that I had a hard time just pulling the facts out and not getting angry about the way that he was, presenting a lot of the information. It was very low vibration. It made me feel like, I was upset or something by the information that he was presenting. And I understand that fear mongering and pushing that anger and that hate and stuff like that can get a lot of attention. Now, I'm not trying to say that he was wrong in anything he was saying. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that he was talking about was very accurate, but it was also blown way out of proportion in a lot of times. I found that difficult for me to try and absorb it in a neutral kind of fashion. And then when he was interviewing, and this is what really did it for me, and for Trump too, because he was interviewing Donald Trump, candidate Trump at the time, right? And so I'm listening to this interview, and it was probably, I don't know, half hour, 45-minute long interview. And at one point, Alex asked Trump two questions that just sealed the deal for me, that I was like, okay, well, I'm not voting for you if that's your reply, right? And Alex asked Trump about surveillance. And Trump answered, "I will be the most surveilling president you have ever seen." And I'm like, whoa, bro, I'm huge into privacy, right? Like, I mean, at the time I was, like, now I'm not so much, but at the time, like, I wouldn't carry a cell phone. I wouldn't do any of that. Like, I mean, I wouldn't put my name on anything. Like, I was very, very secretive. And when he said that he was going to be the most surveilling president ever, I'm like, bro, I don't think so, right? And then he asked about something about like Iraq, or something about what's going on over in the Middle East, and he said that he was going to be the most warring president you have ever seen, right? And it's just like, man, I am going to battle like you wouldn't believe, and he talked about, well, I don't believe in, like, I'm libertarian, right? And as far as the policing of the world and stuff like that, I'm not a fan of any of that stuff. Now, I'm not trying to say that Trump did any of that stuff, right? And I'm not trying to accuse him of whether or not he was a good or bad president or anything. I'm just saying, during that interview, those two things that he said really upset me when I thought about, man, I am not voting for a president that's going to be the most surveilling president or the most warring president you've ever seen. And that's exactly what he said to Alex Jones that day, So I don't know why I brought that up, but that's what I thought about Alex Jones when he said that. Okay, guys, Trump wants to bring back stop and frisk. He said it at a recent rally. Lost my vote. Nope, I'm not there. I mean, I'm not into it, man. I have a right to be secure, right? I have a Fourth Amendment right. My right, right? The rights of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects from unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the places to be searched and the persons and things to be seized. Show me the warrant. It's the Fourth Amendment right. They don't have a right to touch you. They don't have a right to search you. Like, I do understand that if a cop is approaching you for some reason, that there is a part of safety there in which that they get to frisk you for weapons, right? But if they have no reason to talk to you in the first place, then there was no reason to stop you. There was no reason to engage in any kind of conversation. Then there is no contact here, right? I mean, I have a right to be secure. I have a right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, right? And if there's a president out there who doesn't believe in that right, then I don't believe in them, right? I'm a constitutionalist at the end of the day. I believe in, the government staying within the confines of the Constitution. I don't believe there's any compromise to that. There is no compromising, right? I mean, these are our rights. It was there before the government. The government doesn't grant this to them, right? I mean, or grant rights to us. That's not what the government does. These are our rights that we dictate to the government, right? That's really what it comes down to. Okay, I'm going to go. Trump's EU to expand civil asset forfeiture bothered me. You see, all that stuff. It's just like, I don't agree with any of that. All right. A seatbelt ticket is a stop and risk. Or stop and frisk. Okay, I got to go, guys. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.